Good morning. Good Davach. Today, hope you all had a wonderful Shabbos. Today, we're learning the fourth and final Perek of Challah. There's only four Parakim in Challah. We did the other three last week, and tomorrow we start Orla, which is three Parakim. That will take us through Wednesday, and then we have Bikurim, which is the last Masechta in Zraim, which is four Parakim, which takes us Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, and our Siyam Rosh Hashem is going to be on Monday night. More details to follow. Today's shiur is sponsored Lila Nishmas, Aaron Nachman ben Simcha Kohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Baruch Sar ben Shmuel Lev, and Binyamin Moshe ben Yosef ben Neshamas will have an Aliyah. And as mentioned on Friday, this week's shiurim are sponsored by the New York State Chaplain Group. Thank you for your sponsorship. Okay, here we go. Mishnah Aleph, Paradal Mishnah Aleph. Shtei nashim she'asu shnei kabin. If two women made two doughs of one kav each, right? Each dough did not contain the minimum amount of flour, which is chayav and challah, and therefore they have two different kavin, because in order to be chayav and challah, it give you one and a quarter kav. So now they have two women. They each brought one kav each. And those two doughs, they made the same kind of flour, and even if they were touching each other, they are pater from the chiyuv of challah, because the two combined doughs are not considered as a single dough, and therefore it's not chayav and challah. It was man shehem shel isha achas, but when the two doughs belong to one woman, min b'mino chayav. If one kind of dough is joined with its own kind of dough, meaning there's two doughs that they're the same type of grain, they're both made from wheat flour, then the combined dough is chayav and challah. However, one kind of dough is joined with another kind. Let's say you have wheat dough and spelt dough. Okay, and the combined, so one woman is making for Shabbos and she's making wheat challah and she's making spelt challah, and the two are side by side. If they're under the required amount per dough, they are not chayiv in challah, even though they belong to the same woman. Mishnah Beis, which grains are similar enough to be considered as combined with its own kind regarding the chiyuv of challah? Hachitim eino misterefes im kol ela im ha'kusmin. Oh, actually, I spoke too soon before. Wheat does not combine with any grain other than spelt. So what I said before is wrong. The previous Mishnah, it was wheat and barley, but over here, wheat can only combine with spelt. Meaning that wheat is not similar to barley, rye, or oats. Therefore, it does not combine with those grains. But wheat is similar to spelt, and those two grains will therefore combine. Se'orim misterefes imakol chutz min hachitim. Barley, on the other hand, combines with every grain except for wheat. So barley is similar to spelt, rye, and oats, but not to wheat. Therefore, barley combines with spelt, rye, or oats, but not with wheat. So therefore, if you have a barley loaf and a rye loaf that are each, let's say, one kav, and it's owned by one woman, then that would be chayiv in challah. But if it's barley and let's say wheat, then it does not combine. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Shar haminim mistarfim zeh zeh. The other kinds of grain besides wheat and barley, namely, which are spelt, oats, and rye, they all combine with one another. So if you're spelt together with oat, that would be mistarif to a chiyuv of challah. Okay, Mishnah Gimel. Shnei kabim. If if someone made two doughs of one kav each, the kav orez of kav truma b'emsa, and a dough made from a kav of rice flour or from a kav of truma is between the two doughs, connecting them. Einon mitzdarfim. The two doughs do not combine into a single challah dough. Okay, so again, you have a dough that's from a kav of rice flour and a kav of truma, right? Um, one second, I'm confused here. So, kav orez or kav truma bevs? Oh, okay, no, sorry. You made two doughs of one kav each. Okay, so let's say you have two wheat, one of each, one kav of each, and a dough made from either a kav of rice flour or from kav of truma is between those two doughs. You have wheat, and in the middle you have, let's say, truma. And the two doughs on the outside do not combine into a single loaf that's chayiv and challah because they're not connected with a dough that is chayiv in challah. Because the truma loaf or the rice loaf, which are both pater from challah, are not mistarved because you don't give it on rice. Davar shenitlet chalaso be'emsa mistarved. However, something whose challah has already been separated between the two doughs, then the two doughs do combine. The reason is for this is because the connecting dough has been previously chayiv in challah. Unlike a dough of rice, flour, or truma, which challah, challah, which is not chayiv in challah, Therefore, in this case, it would be. So let's say you have, let's say, two loaves of wheat, one on each side, and then you have, let's say, spelt in the middle, or rye or another your grain. Then the two wheat ones would be mistarish, even though there's a rye dough in the middle, because that's eventually chayiv in challah, but the truma in the middle or the rice would not. Okay, Mishnah Dalet. Kav chadosh v'kav yashin shenashchu zebazeh. If a dough made from a kav of new flour and a dough made from a kav of old flour, one's from this year's grain, one's from last year's grain, they were firmly attached so that they bite, quote unquote, into one another. Shmuel says, Yitomin ha'emsa, one separates challah from the middle point, the point where the two attach. So he is separating the challah from both those. The Chachamim Oshrim with the Chachamim asked with that. Because they hold the rule that you cannot give challah or you can't do any trumas maasros from the old for the new of the new from the those are rules we've discussed many times already. I know to challah min hakav regarding someone who separates challah from the dough made with only one kav of flour. A leader adds enough dough to make it large enough to be chayiv challah. Kiva says challah. What he separated is considered challah retroactively. But the Chachamim say, "Ein challah." It is not challah, since it was separated before the dough became subject to the challah obligation. Okay, good. Mishnah Hey, Shnei kavin shenet lechalaso. If someone made two doughs of one kav each, shenet lechalaso shel zeb if ne'asmo v'zeb shel zeb if ne'asmo, and the challah of this dough, of dough number one, was separated by itself, and the challah of dough number two was separated by itself. Okay, Chazar v'asan eats achas, and he then went and combined the doughs into a single two kav dough. Rabbi Akiva poter, Rabbi Akiva paters the combined dough from the challah obligation because challah was already separated. I mean, he separated it from both separately, and then they combined. This is in line with the Rekiva's position in the previous Mishnah, where he rules that if challah was separated from a dough containing less than the minimum amount of flour, it is valid, as long as the final size of the dough was large enough to be subject to the chiyuv. But the Chachamim require that challah be separated. In their opinion, the original challah separation was not valid, since each dough contained less than the minimum amount of flour. Therefore, since the combined dough does contain the minimum amount of flour, it is necessary to separate challah from the combined dough. Okay. Nimsa chumro kulo. It therefore emerges that the Rekiva's stringency in the previous Mishnah, where he rules that the challah that was initially separated has the sanctity of challah, leads to his leniency in this Mishnah, where he exempts the combined dough from challah. Very cool. Okay, let's go. Mishnah Vav. No tell Adam kidei chalim isa shelo from a chalasa. A person may separate an amount that can be used as challah from a tahor dough whose challah has not yet been separated. La asosa b'tahara, and take care to keep it in a state of tahara. Lios mafrish alev b'holei chalas demai, in order to continually designate portions of it as challah for doughs of demai that are tameh. Ad shetisrach, you may continue designating challah from the dough that is separated until it becomes spoiled to the point that it no longer fit for human consumption. At that point, it is not considered food and can no longer be designated as challah. Shechalas demai niteles min hatoher ala tameh b'shalom min hamuka. It is permissible to designate tahor dough as challah for tameh dough. Right, you can designate tahor dough for tameh dough as challah, and to designate a dough that is not close by as challah, because challah for demai may be taken from tahor dough for tameh dough and from a dough that is not close by. You can't do that for tavli. You take it. That only applies for demai. Okay. Surya. Okay, now Surya. We'll go on to Mr. Zion. Yisrael shehayu arisin la'odei Kohanim b'Surya. Regarding Jews who were sharecroppers in the fields of the idolaters in Surya. Okay, Surya, which is located what is now the northern part of Syria, along the banks of the Euphrates River, that was conquered in Eretz Yisrael by David HaMelech. Since the conquest of Surya took place before the entirety of Eretz Yisrael proper was completely conquered and divided, Surya does not have the status of Eretz Yisrael according to Torah law. So this Mishnah to discuss is the two disputes, one which pertains to challah regarding the status of the produce of Surya. So regarding the sharecroppers, the Jewish sharecroppers who were in the fields of the idolaters in Surya, Rabbi Lezer rules that their produce is, according to the Rabbanan, chayiv, the laws of Maisus and Shemitah, because the Rabbanan law equates Surya with Eretz Yisrael with regard to the laws of Maisus and Shemitah. Rabbi Gamliel rules that it is exempt from these laws. In his view, the rabbinic obligations of Maisus and Shemitah in Surya are limited to produce grown on land owned entirely by Jews and does not extend to land that's owned by the Kohanim. And Rabbi Gamliel says, "Shtei chalas b'Surya, two portions of challah are separated from dough in Surya, so it's outside Eretz Yisrael." Rabbi Eliezer says, "Challah achas, no, only one portion of challah is separated in Surya, because Surya is treated like Eretz Yisrael regarding Challah. Achsu kulo sharam Gamliel, but kulo sharam Eliezer. Originally, the people took hold of both the leniency of Gamliel regarding Maisus and Shemitah, and the leniency of Eliezer regarding Challah. Therefore, thus the Jewish sharecroppers in Surya did not observe the laws of Shemitah and Maisus, yet they separated only a single challah portion from the dough of Surya. When they were made aware of the inconsistency of the approach, they changed their practice to follow the words of Rabbi Gamliel, who did not equate Surya with Eretz Yisrael in both matters. Therefore, the sharecroppers did not observe the laws of Moses and Shemitah, but they did separate two challah portions from the dough of Surya. You would think that makes sense because separating two portions of dough is a lot easier to do than keeping the laws of Maisus and Shemitah. Especially Shemitah are very complicated. So they went with Rabbi Gamliel, who said you take two from challah from challah from the dough, and did not chayav Maisus and Shemitah, whereas Rabbi Eliezer was chayav them in Shemitah and Maisus, which is more of a chumrah. So let's go with Rabbi Gamliel. Let's go with the coolers. Here. Okay. Mishnah Ches. Mishnah Ches needs a little bit of an introduction because it's a long Mishnah. Okay. Midir Raisa, the mitzvah of Challah applies only in Eretz Yisrael and only when most of the Jews people are living there. However, the Chachamim required that the Challah be separated even nowadays and even outside of Eretz Yisrael. We're probably getting to the point in history where Challah is soon to be Raisa in Eretz Yisrael. So I think we're almost getting to that number where most Jews are living there. Nevertheless, but I'm not the posting of Dora, so don't go by me for that ruling. Nevertheless, different areas have different laws based on the following. When Yeshua conquered Eretz Yisrael after he's in Mitzrayim, they were in the desert for 40 years, and Yeshua was brought them into Eretz Yisrael. So he sanctified the lands that he conquered, but his Kedushas Haaretz ended by Choron Bayis Rishon when Klal Yisrael was exiled to Bavel. 70 years later, the Galus Bavel returned to Eretz Yisrael under the leadership of Ezra Sofer, and they reconquered much, but not all, of the land, and were makdish all of the areas of conquest. This second sanctification, according to the view that will be followed in this Mishnah, remains in effect even today. Therefore, there are three regions regarding Challah. The area A is the area that was mekudesh by Yeshua and re-sanctified by Ezra, which are still holy today. Area B are the areas sanctified only by Yeshua, which were holy until the first temple was destroyed, but are no longer holy. And Area C, lands that were conquered neither by Yeshua or by Ezra, and were therefore never holy. And now the Mishnah is describing how Challah is separated in each region. So here we go. Rabbi Gamliel says, Shalosh Aratzos the Challah. There are three regions with respect to the laws of Challah, meaning the part of Eretz Yisrael that was re-sanctified by Ezra and is still holy today. The Eretz Yisrael, Kaziv, Challah Echas. In the areas of Eretz Yisrael until the city of Kaziv. Kaziv was the northernmost city to be conquered and re-sanctified by the Jews who came back from Babel. Although the main northern border established by Ezra runs parallel to the town of Akko, which is south of Kaziv, a strip of land extending northward from Akko to Kaziv was also conquered and sanctified. So from that area, one portion of Challah is separated and is given to a Kohen, which is eaten by him or by an eligible member of his household while they are tahor. The second region, which was conquered and sanctified by Yeshua, but not by Ezra, Mikaziv, V'Adhanar, V'Adamana Shtechalas. In the area from Kaziv eastward until the river, and from, the river meaning the Jordan River, and from Kaziv westward unto the mountains of Amana, which was originally part of Eretz Yisrael, but not conquered by Ezra. The two Challah portions are separate. Achas the or, one is to be burned in the fire, since this area is tamei from the tumah of lands outside Eretz Yisrael. Achas the Kohen, and one is to be given to the Kohen, so that people should understand that one that is burned in the fire is burned because of tumah. Shal or yesh lo shiur, the one that's burned in the fire must have a minimum measure. The shal kohen ein la shiur. The one of the kohen has no minimum measure. Has no minimum measure. Okay, the third region, which was never conquered, therefore never part of Eretz Yisrael, min hana'ar, the min amana, lifnim shtei chalos, from the riverbank and from the foot of the Amana mountains inward, towards the river eastward and toward the mountains westward, meaning the entire area from the riverbank and into the river and beyond, and from the foot of the mountains into the mountains and beyond. Two challah portions are separate. Achas ta'or, one is to be burned in the fire, since the area is tummy from the tumah of lands outside Eretz Yisrael. Achas the Kohen, one is to be given to the Kohen, so that the law that challah is given to a Kohen not be forgotten. The shal or ein la shiur, the one burned in the fire is no minimum measure. The shal kohen yesh la shiur, while the one of the kohen must have a minimum measure. Okay, with full yom ochla, but a kohen or a member of his household who is a tful yom may eat the challah. So tful yom is someone who finished his tahara process that day, and he went to the mikveh, but he can only eat his manas kahuna starting that night. So tful yom, he may eat the challah that would have otherwise been burned in the fire. Okay. Rabbi Yossi says, Eino tsar tvila, he does not need to have immersed in a mikveh in order to eat the challah outside Eretz Yisrael. That's only for inside Eretz Yisrael. Surya lezavim lezavos lenida yolados. Challah separate outside Eretz Yisrael is forbidden to a kohen or a member of his household who is a zav, zava, or nida, or a woman who has given birth. Therefore, if the only available Kohanim are tummy with such types of tumah, then the two portions must be set aside, one to be burned, and the other portion may be eaten, even like Kohanim with tummy with such types of tumah. Okay. Im hazar al shulchan, it may be eaten by a kohen even along with a non-kohen at one table. The Chacham did not ask this due to the concern that the non-kohen may eat the challah. B'nitenes the kohen, and may be given to any kohen, even one who is not careful to eat chulin, only under conditions of tahara. Mishnah test. No, we have test Yudid Aleph. Hang in there. Elu, Mishnah test. Elu nitanim the kohen. These two may be given to any kohen, even one who is not careful to eat chulin, only under conditions of tahara. Hacharamim vows the choros and the firstborn animal offerings. Upidjon ben, being put the firstborn son. Upidjon pet the chamor, and the redemption of the firstborn the redemption sheep of the firstborn donkey. The chayim, the kiva, and the foreleg, the jaws, and the abomination with the fourth stomach of a kosher animal. Rishis gaze and the first of the fleece, the shem and sreifa, an oil of truma that must be burned because it became tameh, the kache hamikdash, and the Kohen's portion of holy offerings of the Beis Hamikdash, and Bikurim, which are brought to the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yehuda Osip Bikurim. Rabbi Yehuda Aser is giving Bikurim to a Kohen who is not careful about Tumah. Hashine Truma. Regarding vetch, which is a type of herb of Truma, which is used as animal feed, Rabbi Kiva Matir. Rabbi Kiva permits giving it to any Kohen, even one who is not careful Ichulin only under the conditions of Tahara. Chacham Osir, but the Chacham asked that doing so, since people eat vetch during a famine, they classify it as human food, and therefore it must be safeguarded from Tumah. Therefore, it can only be given to a Kohen who can be trusted to protect the Truma from Tumah. Mishnah Yud, Nitai, Ish Tekoa, Hevi Chalos Mibeitar. Nitai, a resident of Tekoa, which is a town in Eretz Yisrael, brought challah portions to Eretz Yisrael from Beitar. It was the town outside Eretz Yisrael that he had been visiting in order to distribute them to the Kohanim of Tekoa. Beisar should not be confused with the famous city known in Eretz Yisrael as Beitar, which was in Eretz Yisrael, and was destroyed by Harjayanus. Rather, this Mishnah is talking about a town outside Eretz Yisrael with a similar name, Beisar, not in Eretz Yisrael. The low kibu mimenu, but they did not accept these challah portions from him, because challah separated outside Eretz Yisrael is tameh due to the Rabbanan imposed tumah on the lands outside Eretz Yisrael. Instead, they instructed him to save the challah and burn it with his chametz before Pesach. Anshe Alexandria, Alexandria. In a similar incident, residents of Alexandria from Egypt brought their challah portions to Eretz Yisrael from Alexandria. Well, they did not accept the challah from them either. Anshe Har Tzivoyim Heviu Bikurehem Kodem Atzeres. The residents of Mount Tzivoyim once brought the Bikurim to the Beis Hamikdash before the Yontif of Shavuos. But they did not accept the Bikurim from them. Bifnei Hakos Torah, because the pasuk in the Torah regarding the Shtei Halechem Shavuos Chag Hakatz Bikurei Maasecha Asher Tizra B'Sadeh. And the festival of the harvest being Shavuos, the first fruits of your labors regarding the Shtei Halechem that you plant in the field. By referring to the Shtei Halechem as the first fruits, this teaches us that Bikurim may not be brought until the two loaves are offered on Shavuos. And finally, Mishnah Yud Aleph Ben Antinos Ben Antinos brought firstborn animals from Babel to Eretz Yisrael for the Kohanim to offer upon the Mizbeach, but they did not accept them from him, from the altar, because there's only a Bechor born in Eretz Yisrael may be brought onto the Mizbeach. Yosef HaKohen, Hevi B'kurei Yain V'Shemen. Yosef the Kohen brought his first ripening grapes and oils that grew in Eretz Yisrael as Bikurim in the form of wine and oil. But they did not accept them from him, since the fruits themselves must be brought as Bikurim and not their juices. And finally, Af, who as Banav Ibn Beso, Lasos Pesach Kat of Yerushalayim. He also brought his minor sons and the members of his household to offer Pesach Sheni on the 14th of Iyar in Yerushalayim. But they turned him back, preventing him from offering Pesach Sheni on behalf of his sons. So that the matter of having minor children participate in Pesach Sheni should not be established as a requirement. The person has to, brings his minor children by the first Pesach, because he's obligated to appear with his kids in the Beis Hamikdash for Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, but there is no requirement to include them in the Pesach Sheni. Ariston, Hevi Bikura mi Afmaya. Ariston brought his Bikurim to the base of Midrash in Yerushalayim from Mapamya, which is a city in Surya that was outside the biblical borders of Eretz Yisrael. The Kibbutz Menu, and they accepted the Bikurim from him and performed the Bikurim ceremony in the base of Midrash, even though Bikurim are not brought from lands outside of Israel. With Nesha Arma, because the Chacham said, Hakona beSurya, Kakona bePars beParvar Yerushalayim. One who purchases the land in Surya is like one who purchases the land in the very outskirts of Yerushalayim, meaning that the sages decreed that Bikurim must be brought from produce grown in Surya, just as it may be brought from produce grown in the outskirts of Yerushalayim. Hajan Alach Meseches Challah. We will see you tomorrow for Mishnayos for Meseches Orla, 9 o'clock. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.
Have a great day. Mazal tov.